Hello everyone and welcome back to Odds on Premier League. On today's show we'll be previewing Matchday 26 of the Premier League with betting tips and predictions on every single game. If you enjoy the show, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell to make sure you don't miss any of our daily betting video uploads. And remember, you can win a £10 free bet from Novibet simply by adding a comment in the comments section below. And now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Matchday 26 of the Premier League. Hasn't that come around quickly? February is just flying by. With me today to analyse and preview every single game this week is Tom Rennie. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you for having me back after last week's excellent predictions.
Well, let's see how we do and how we fare this weekend. We start with Manchester City at home to West Ham. Potentially a great game in the early kickoff on Saturday. Potentially, though, a coupon buster as well. The runaway leaders City take on Tom's beloved West Ham. As we know, City, they're the top of the Premier League. They're the runaway leaders, as I said. They've won 18 in a row in all competitions. They haven't lost in 34 games, and that was back in September. They also do have to travel to Gladbach in midweek in the Champions League, so that's one thing to bear in mind heading into this game at the weekend. West Ham, on the other hand, fourth in the Premier League. David Moyes' side are in the Champions League spots, and it's nearly March. They're also the top side in London. They've been brilliant this season, and I've got to say they bought superbly well. Since Halloween, they've only lost to Liverpool, Chelsea and Man United. So yeah, that's just incredible stats. I actually really fancy West Ham for this one. I know they've got to go... Do
you?
I know.
What? What are you talking about?
Okay, when I say that, I think they've got a decent chance. So that's why I'm actually looking at a double chance at 4.3 odds. I just think that the odds are too low on City, and perhaps Gladbach might be a tougher ask. Let's see how that one fares. But what do you think heading into this one in the early kickoff?
Well, there's not a great deal of value in Man City betting these days. Why? Because they used to win games 4-0, 5-0, 6-0. They used to really try and crush the opponent. Now, they don't really do that anymore. You look at the Everton game when they got the third, they shut it down. They got the first goal against Arsenal last weekend, they shut it down. And that's vaguely similar across the season, really. Even when they beat Burnley 2-0 a few weeks ago, very similar story. Got that second and the game was over. West Ham will go and they will look to defend. They're a very well-organised side, high-energy side. They'll look to hit on the break. The fitness of Mikel Antonio, as ever, is going to be a contributory factor as to how this game will go. I think he has the ability to bully Stones, Diaz, Laporte, whoever they put in there. But getting more than 60 minutes out of Mikel Antonio is often the big question with West Ham. Look, I think City will win. I think it won't be a thrashing. I think it'll be narrow. I'd be looking for maybe under 2.5 for a City win is what I'd be looking at. If Angelo Ogbonna comes back for West Ham, maybe less so. But narrow 1-0 City is where I would be on this.
Okay, City, yeah, as we said, they are a winning juggernaut, so they could be running wild again against West Ham. Into the other game.
Running wild. A 1-0 win isn't running wild. I mean, I'd hate to be on your stag do if you think a 1-0 win is running wild. That's more like cup of tea with grandma win. Okay,
well, a narrow win at the Etihad, perhaps, for Pep's side. The next game is West Brom against Brighton. Not a game for the neutral, this one. West Brom, 19th. They're 11 points from safety with 13 games to play. That's not a very good ratio for a side with only 2 wins all season. They've been picking up draws, but 1 point against Fulham and Sheffield United really, I think, probably sealed their fate for this season. Brighton, on the other hand, they looked in quite deep trouble earlier in the season, a couple of weeks ago, but now they've got 6 games unbeaten in the league. They've actually had some pretty tight games recently. They've only conceded 2 in their last 7, which has really tightened up at the back. Of course, they were recording on Monday, so they play actually tonight against Palace in that derby. I'm looking at sort of under 2 goals at 2.5 or a Brighton to win to 0. I like the look of as well at 3.3. I don't expect much here. How do you see it? How do you see this one, Tom?
No, we've started with 2 games here where I don't see a great deal of value, to be honest. I think that, as you said there, Brighton defensively improved massively. I think Graham Potter made a realisation a few weeks ago they aren't going to football their way out of this. They're going to bludgeon their way out of it, and that's exactly what they've done. Strong tackles, big headers, clearances off the line, get stuck in, don't overcommit, and that's worked out really well for them. It's the Allardyce story in many ways from a manager we don't expect that from. I mean, West Brom should have won at Burnley. They should have won. The chances are ludicrous. The Pereira miss, was an open goal. If that goes in, I don't see Burnley scoring. But they failed to do so. I think they're long gone, West Bromwich Albion. 14 points, 11 to make up. It is not going to happen. They're not going to go on a winning run to that degree. But I do think they will get a bit loose here. I do think they are going to score. I think they're going to be offensive from the outset. I think that Brighton will go toe-to-toe with them. I see an exciting game, actually. So I'd be looking at a draw, high-scoring draw maybe. Both teams to score will probably give you some good value here.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, straight draw is 3.47. And clearly that would be a decent return if you like the odds and that as a result. Looking into the next games, Leeds against Aston Villa. Leeds 12th in the league, Villa 8th. Leeds have conceded the second most in the division and scored 40, just one fewer actually than Chelsea. They've lost 3 of the last 5. It's been very inconsistent and really hard to judge and pick real tips for Leeds all season. Villa, on the other hand, they had a brilliant start to the season, and a top half finish looks very likely. In their last 3 games, they've lost to Leicester, they've drawn with Brighton, and they beat Arsenal, which really does sum up their season. The odds show that Leeds are favourites, but I really can't trust either in this. I can't even trust the goals market, but odds of around 4 looks tempting for me, actually. What about you in this one?
I mean, we don't know about Grealish yet, and that's such a decisive factor when it comes to Aston Villa. If Grealish was there against Leicester at the weekend, I think they would have got something. As much as El Ghazi and Trezeguet have their moments, they're not in the same league as Jack Grealish is. So he remains a doubt for this one. We won't know until right up on the day as to whether he's going to play or not. Leeds United, you know what they're going to do. They will be very open. They will be harem-scarem. There will be 100% commitment from every single player they have got. As ever, I don't think they have the players to be able to deliver Bielsa ball consistently for 90 minutes every single week. So their games are always very difficult. I don't see it being tight. I don't see it being boring. And I am going on Dean Smith's words from Sunday that Jack Grealish should be fit for this one, should be in contention to play. And if he is, I'd be looking for a Villa win, but I'd also be looking for both teams to score in this one.
Okay, well, wait until you see those teams announced to really make that decision. But Aston Villa at 3.24 to win Allen Road is a pretty good odds if you like the look of Villa with Grealish in the side. The next game is Newcastle against Wolves. Newcastle 17th in the Premier League. Pressure on Steve Bruce from the fans is perennial, isn't it? It just doesn't go away, and arguably rightly so. The Magpies are only just avoiding relegation. Thankfully, 3 teams are worse than them in the division. But they've had awful starts, leaving too much to catch up on Newcastle. Wolves, they've won 3 of the last 4 in the league. Only twice in their last 20 games has a scoreline been separated by more than 1 goal. You can see how they keep quite a lot of games very, very even between most opponents. Wolves are the favourites here at 2.2. I'm actually looking at a Wolves clean sheet at 250. But what's your pick in this one?
I was covering Newcastle at the weekend against Manchester United, and I thought they were awful, actually. I thought they were really awful because there's no way they're going to score many goals, if any goals, without Callum Wilson. It doesn't work without Callum Wilson, 10 goals this season, great haul from him. I think Saint-Maximin's a very good player, but as you'd expect from someone like him, young talent, very skillful, but no real position, flits in, flits out, brilliant half-volley goal at Old Trafford, a great volley at the start of the second half, then we didn't see him again for another 40 minutes. I know he's been suffering with long COVID as well, so there's all issues there. But who's going to be that focal point? Joe Linton is not a striker. Dwight Gow is not a Premier League striker, 31 now, and I still think of him as a 20-year-old player trying to prove himself. I mean, it's incredible that he's 31. He still looks like he's 6 years old. And you always think, oh, good young boy coming through. Like we're basically the same age. And I'm not a young boy. It's very strange. So I don't see how Newcastle are going to score. The Steve Bruce thing, look, there's this whole thing. I saw Jermaine Genius talking about it at the weekend. Some Newcastle fans have wanted him out from the start because he was Sunderland manager. I don't agree with that. I think there might be some nutters that think that. But in general, it's because they've watched them. And if you watch Newcastle every week, there's a complete lack of ambition from that side on the field. Attacking talent, they've got Miguel Almiron, who carries the ball upfield. They've got Ryan Fraser, who You know, if someone can instill some confidence back in him, they might well be a threat. You know, Joe Linton's a poor player, but you've got to get people around him for him to knock it down to. I don't know. I think that they have a lack of ambition in the way that they play. And I think that feeds into everything. And they look nervous when they play. And the moment Man United went 2-1 up, the game was over at Old Trafford. Incredible heart to win against Southampton with 9 men a few weeks ago. But I just don't see how they're going to win enough games to stay up. And this weekend, they will be in the bottom 3 if they lose and Fulham win, because Fulham have a superior goal difference. It was a 10-point gap last weekend when the weekend got underway. Lucky for them, despite Wolves' recent run, I'm not sure how it happened, because how they score is a mystery to me as well. I think your best chance of making some money here is to be looking at goalless draws or a 1-0 win either way. You know, a below 1.5 and under 1.5. I'd lean towards a away win, but goalless draw will be my tip.
Okay, goalless draw in that one. They're both missing their star men up front, Callum Wilson and Raul Jimenez, of course. We spoke about Fulham as we move into Sunday's action now. Fulham, they take on Palace at Selhurst. Crystal Palace have lost back-to-back games, but look relatively secure for another season. But there's just a 7-point gap to their opponents, Fulham. So who knows what could happen if the Cottagers get a win here. On 6 occasions this season, their opponents have scored 3 or more against them. They're also going to be without Wilfried Zaha, and without him in the side, they've lost 18 of 20 Premier League games without their star man. As I said, they play Brighton again tonight, so we'll see how that fares. Fulham, their hopes of survival had a lovely little boost at the weekend. They've won. Wins are critical when they're at the bottom. They've won 2 out of their 3. They closed the gap to Newcastle. There's a very important game here against Selhurst, because after this, they've got Spurs, Liverpool and Man City. So points here are going to be really key to their survival hopes. Fulham look up for the challenge, and they're actually favourites when they go to take on the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, I like the look of Fulham, and I've liked the look of them for a good 5-6 weeks. I think that Joachim Andersen and Tosin Adarabioyo at centre-half look very good, very strong. They actually like to defend, which is something they've not had with like Tim Ream, Dennis Adoy, some of the guys they have played in those positions. That's made a big difference. I think Harrison Reed may well have been the player of the month for February in the Premier League in central midfield. I think he was absolutely fantastic in the win at Everton, and several of the other good performances they've put in have been down to him. And they have a real set of options for the person next to him as well, whether it's Anguissa or Kearney if he's back fit, or some of the other players that have played in there. They've got a good balance with him and somebody else, and he covers maybe 9 to 11k a game as well, which is incredible, the amount of energy he puts in. Up front, I like the look of Josh Maja. He looks like a bit of a 40-minute burst player. I'd be looking at maybe starting Cavaliero, taking him off, bringing Maja on to finish. I wouldn't bring Mitrovic back in. You know, hopefully he's over COVID, but I don't think, COVID or otherwise, that he is good enough to score goals in the Premier League, something he's proved over and over again. And I think Fulham have hit on a little combination there with Maggio and Cavaliero and some of the other players they've got to carry the ball forward. Lookman looks fantastic at the moment. I can only see a Fulham win. They've got something to play for, and Crystal Palace have essentially got 15 players and their manager playing for a contract they ain't going to get. So that's all there is for Crystal Palace now. Maybe you get 2 more years at Crystal Palace. What a prize. So I'd be looking at Fulham here. I'd be looking at Fulham comfortably as well. And I'd certainly be looking at the first goal scorer market with a whole bunch of players. Maja, Lookman will be right up there for me. And I can only see a Fulham comfortable win. Maybe even by a couple of goals.
Well, Fulham 2.3 to a win away at Palace. But yeah, if you look at the Asian handicap -1, those odds are even more inflated. So that's what we're looking at there. The next game is probably one of the games of the weekend. Leicester against Arsenal. The title race, as I said, is all but over, but Leicester would love to finish second. They're level on points with Man United. They're always a better side when Jamie Vardy is fit and starting. You mentioned Harvey Barnes last week. You praised him on our show, and then he went on to score again at the weekend. Arsenal, they're 10th in the Premier League. They lost to Man City through that early headed goal by Raheem Sterling after, 70 seconds. They've got 1 win in 4, and even the Europa League looks a bit of a tough ask for them at this stage. They've lost 11 games this season in the league. That's as many as Fulham. And I think that odds of 2.5 for a home win for Leicester are pretty solid odds here for the Foxes.
The only issue I have with that analysis is that Arsenal often pull out good performances against big teams. You know, they put themselves in the self-proclaimed Big Six. I would suggest they're very good when they play teams in the Big Six. They have been usurped in that group of clubs by Leicester. When they take on the big clubs, they tend to know what they're doing. Mikel Arteta is a good manager of an underdog mid-table side. He's done a great job of turning Arsenal into a mid-table side. Maybe that's because that's his speciality. I don't know. Defense. I mean, you look at Arsenal player for player. It is not a good squad. I mentioned last week, you go through that squad, put them in Brighton kits, and you'd go, not great this lot, actually, are they? I mean, even Aubameyang, you know, I think that Jamie Redknapp said last week he's lost his superpower. And I quite like the way he phrased that, because he was so superb. He was so deadly for Dortmund, for Arsenal, for AC Milan. And you watch him now and you see a kind of faded force. You see a yesterday's man in Aubameyang. And the way Arteta doesn't seem to know how to get the best out of him, the way he's never really had faith in Lacazette, he doesn't really fancy Nketiah. The season has been saved by Bukayo Saka, who looks like he could be a really classy player, and it's the kind of player that Arsenal need to build their team around. But it is a massive rebuild, and I think if this was Unai Emery in charge or anyone else for that matter, I think they would have been long gone at Arsenal if they still had top six ambitions. But I think they've sort of settled for mid-table for a long, long time, unless they spend big money, which they won't, which they don't. So my only question would be whether Arsenal can sit deep, absorb Leicester and hit them on the break. And Leicester have got better with the ball. You think of them as a counter-attacking side. Brendan Rodgers is a better coach than that. They've got better players than that. I think they've got better with the ball, as we saw against Aston Villa in the opening 25, 30 minutes at Villa Park at the weekend. I'd still fancy Leicester, but I'd be looking at a narrow result. I feel like I've said that a lot this weekend, but I see a lot of games where there's not really any thrashing in there. There's nothing I'd be looking at for over 2.5, 3.5. This is going to be a narrow game. I'd be looking at low-scoring draw, Leicester to nick it. I want to say Arsenal can get something because I feel like that's where there's money to be made, but it's a braver man than me that says Arsenal are going to win. So I'd be looking for narrow, Leicester 2-1, that kind of scoreline. I
completely agree with you. This weekend there are some very close matches, so these tips could go either way, but we're hoping they'll go certainly our way. Moving into the next game, it's Spurs against Burnley. Oh dear, Jose, it's not going to plan at all. Spurs have lost 5 of their last 6 Premier League games. Jose seems to have convinced half the fan base that he's the best man for the job. I don't know how he's done that. The next 3 games are Burnley, Fulham and Palace. Surely a minimum of 7 points is to keep his job.
Yeah.
Burnley 15th in the league, unbeaten in 4, 6 points above that bottom 3 zone. They're certainly better at Turf Moor. They've actually lost exactly half their away games this season. The bookies still have Spurs as huge favourites at 1.6. I think under 2.5 goals you can get at 2. Burnley double chance because they're actually 6.8. So you can get a double chance at 2.5, which is, I think, maybe something because Spurs are certainly not in form.
No, I mean, if you are looking at anything for Burnley, it's draw, draw, draw. That is what they're going to go for. That's what they're going to play for. That's how they're going to stay in the Premier League. Look at recent results. The draw against Brighton, draw against Fulham, draw against West Brom. They thrashed Crystal Palace, but I think everyone is still staggered by everything that happened in that game, including the Matt Loughton volley, which was his first goal in 17 years or something, but incredible finish. Look, I think that you've got 2 teams here that are naturally quite negative and naturally quite cautious. What's going to be interesting is how much pressure Mourinho actually thinks he is under. There was the story last week about the £30 million if they do want to sack him. I think without that, they'd be thinking about it. I mean, Daniel Levy wants to consider his own future if he actually has given Jose Mourinho a contract with a £30 million payment if they decide to sack him early, which always felt inevitable with Jose Mourinho here, trying to get the last spurts out of a Pochettino squad. It was never going to happen for Mourinho with these sorts of players. I thought against West Ham, though, last 20 minutes when he had Dele Alli, Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Gareth Bale and Lucas Moura on the pitch at the same time, you started to think, wow, look at these attacking players. Look at how much they can get at somebody. And they were very unlucky not to get a draw against West Ham in the end, the way they pushed. And West Ham was trying to stop them from scoring and did very well to do so in the end. If we see an offensive, attacking, confident Tottenham Hotspur in the first 20 minutes here, I think they could put Burnley to the sword. So I can see 2 scorelines here, 4-0 and 0-0. Those are the 2. If Tottenham score, I think they win big. If they fail to score the first goal, I think that the Burnley don't score either. So those would be the two that I'd be looking at.
Okay, Pope could be has a backache, or he could have a very calm day. Who knows what's going to happen in that one?
Yeah. Maybe take a book just in case if you're the Burnley keeper. That's what I'm saying.
It's good advice. The next game is Chelsea against Man United.
Horrible game.
Horrible game?
Horrible game to predict. Give me some stats. This is so horrible. I was thinking about this for about an hour this morning, and I've come up with about 7 feasible scorelines. 7 possibilities. Tuchel's men, they go to Bucharest in midweek for the Champions League, whilst Ollie's Reds, they've actually got home comforts this week, and they'll be able to rest some players against Sociedad, seeing as they were 4-0 up in that first leg. Chelsea 5th, as we know, they've won 5 of their last 7 since Tuchel arrived at the Bridge. 4 of their goals were by a single goal margin, and also the 9 goals they have scored are by 7 different players. So it shows that Tuchel's still trying to work out exactly who his ideal starting 11 would be. United, title's gone. Solskjaer won't admit it, but it is. The away side here at the Bridge have actually got huge odds. They scored 21 goals in their last 6 games, and they're the only team not to lose an away game in the top flight. Odds of 3.72 on United to win this one, which actually I like. Yeah, I mean, if I was going to go anywhere with this, I'd be lumping on Manchester United to win, because I think that they have got the Sociedad game midweek where they're going to be able to rest so many players. It's 4-0, it's done, it's over. You'll be seeing a whole bunch of youth team players in that game. They didn't play Cavani at the weekend against Newcastle United, so he would have had 2 weeks of rest, essentially, between playing against Sociedad and in the first leg and then this game. So it's a huge amount of rest for him. They need a centre-forward. Martial is not a centre-forward. So I'd be looking at Cavani here to start. Marcus Rashford looks sensational at the moment in his favoured position, the position where Chelsea have got 17 players and no one who knows how to do it, which is inside left. Marcus Rashford, better than everyone Chelsea have got in that position, scored a brilliant goal against Newcastle at the weekend. So I think that United look strong. Unless they pick up a big injury to Bruno Fernandes, I would quite fancy them here. With Chelsea, look, I think Thomas Tuchel hasn't really been able to bring a great deal to this team in terms of Tuchelness to it. I think there's a real new manager bounce with a sensationally talented squad, but he's also had fairly favourable fixtures as well. You want to face Tottenham right now. You want to face Sheffield United. You want to face Newcastle. Against Southampton, I think they struggle. They struggle for rhythm. They struggle for any particular style of play. And I would say that going from all the Thomas Tuchel games, their outstanding player has been Mason Mount, Lampard's boy. That's the only reason he's in the team, right? He's been Thomas Tuchel's outstanding player, but I haven't quite seen much change at Chelsea so far. What we've seen is players realising all of a sudden there's a new boss here, better impress. I don't really know what he's aiming for. I don't really know what sort of team he's going to pick for this game, to be honest. I mean, who could pick the Chelsea 11 right now and get it right? I don't think even Thomas Tuchel could, as we record the programme days before. And Man United keep proving away from home that they are able to pull off sensational results. And I'd fancy them here. Don't know how fit Scott McTominay is going to be. I'd like to see him come in alongside Fred in midfield because I think that's their best two. I think Scott McTominay is one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. And I think he's been sensational whenever I've seen them this season. Offensively, defensively, incredible energy. So if it's him, Fred and Fernandes in midfield, Rashford and Cavani as part of a front three with whomever else they've got on the right-hand side. Dan James maybe has played himself into the first team in recent wins. I'd quite fancy United here, but of course they're only good for 80 minutes in all games. The opening 10, they will be diabolical. So I'd be looking here for Chelsea opening goal, Man United to win.
Okay, very nice. That sounds like an absolute cracker. The penultimate game.
But I've got 6 other scores for you if you want them as well.
So send them over as well. We'll use them. The penultimate game on Matchday 26 rounds off Sunday's action. It's Sheffield United versus Liverpool. Surely the Reds don't lose again here. Surely. Sheffield United, we know they're bottom. We know that they're gone, really. They've hit Derby's iconic 11 points, so the Rams have to live with that a little bit longer. Sheffield United's mini revival is certainly over with 3 defeats in a row. But let's look at Liverpool now. They're 6th. They're the first league champions to lose 4 in a row since Everton in the 1920s. Speaking of the Toffees, they won the Merseyside derby at Anfield on Saturday. Liverpool have got Leipzig in midweek, but they should be okay. They've got sort of, I'd say, 1 foot in next round with a decent performance last week. Yeah, they're playing the Blades. I've got to say Liverpool to win both halves at 2.2 looks where I think I can find some decent value. They're 1.44 for the win. The Blades, of course, they're 8, which is probably could be a bit higher.
Yeah, I mean, there's no scenario where I'd put any of my hard-earned English pounds on Sheffield United to get a result. Not in this game, not in any game. I do feel for them because they've had injury issues. They recruited poorly in the summer. COVID summer, there wasn't a great deal of money about, but everyone they brought in hasn't improved the team. And of course, they've lost key players all season. So they were never in the race to survive. And one more point means they won't equal, as you say, the worst ever record in the history of the Premier League. And I think they will get a couple more wins, but they won't breach 20, I don't think. In this one, with Liverpool, I was doing the Everton game at the weekend. I've actually covered most of their losses at home this season, weirdly enough. And I'll be doing this game at the weekend as well. So sorry, Liverpool fans. I keep thinking of the episode of The Simpsons where Ned Flanders has a mental breakdown and they cut to his parents in the hospital. And his dad says to the doctor, "We've tried nothing and I'm all out of ideas." And that's what I keep thinking when I think of Liverpool, because they keep trying the exact same team, as in the exact same setup, in the same sort of way, playing the same sort of way, and it's not happening for them. You know, Nat Phillips and Ozan Kabak, God bless them, that's a League One central defensive pairing. So why not try 3 at the back, 5 at the back, maybe a more deep-lying central midfielder? You know, try and go into a game not to lose. I know it's not the Klopp way. I know it's not the Liverpool way, but they're on 40 points. They're, 19 off the top. It's one of the worst defences, provably, in the history of the Premier League, but they're not trying anything. They'll set up in exactly the same way with their B team plus the front 3. They will beat Sheffield United. I think they have put in some good performances recently against West Ham, against Tottenham, against Leipzig, as you mentioned, in the first leg of the Champions League. I think they'll win. I think they'll win comfortably. The only way to make any money in this one, because of who Sheffield United are, is to be looking at over 3.5, over 4.5. I'd be looking at 4.5 to get some value, but again, that'd be a speculative low bet from me. Liverpool to win, you know, is dull, but it's going to happen. Yeah,
I think we're both in agreement there. The Reds are going to bounce back against the Blades in this one, and we round off Matchday 26 on Monday evening. It's Everton against Southampton. Everton, as mentioned, they beat their fiercest rivals at the weekend. Carlo's a cool customer, and he certainly looks to be carefully moulding his side. It's a huge boost to them to see Calvert-Lewin return to action off the bench at the weekend. I think, they're a very promising side, and I think next season they could have a really good return. If we look at Southampton, they're actually got the worst form in the division. They're 20th in the standings on the form, just 1 point on their last 7 games. They topped the table in early November, but that seems a long time ago now. Everton's home form isn't great, but I actually really fancy them for this one. I actually fancy Asian handicap -1 at 3.55. What do you think?
I think that's not too bad, actually. I think Everton at home have struggled this season. 14 points across the campaign is not good enough. If they could have matched the home form with the away, I think that they'd be up there challenging, but they've just struggled at home to break teams down. I think James Rodriguez, he's had a good season, but I think it's games like this where they brought James Rodriguez in and it hasn't quite happened for him on a regular basis for whatever reason. Though he's brought to Richarlison, and his performance in the first half against Liverpool at Anfield was brilliant, I thought. Really, he battles as well. The story about, can he do it in the winter on Merseyside? He did it in the winter in Madrid and Munich, okay? They have snow there too, so it's a silly story. But I would have wanted more from him in games like this. Calvert-Lewin being back is a massive boon for them. Him, Richarlison, James, they should have enough to create against Southampton, who will go for the draw in this game. Good to see Yannick Vestergaard come back in. He was fantastic for them before this poor run of results. You never know about Danny Ings until the last minute as to whether he's going to be fit. If he's not fit, Southampton will not score. And I would go with you. Narrow, maybe for Everton. Asian handicap in favour of Everton seems like a safe bet to me. But again, another narrow one. There's no real thrashings this weekend. And if this did finish level and maybe goalless, I wouldn't be fall off your seat surprised.
So we've now previewed every game on Matchday 26 of the Premier League, but there's just one more thing we need to do before we sign off, and that's the Premier League ACCA. Tom, give us your selections when you can.
These are always tough, because it's normally you'd be like favourites to win. Where are the favourites? There aren't really any these days in the Premier League. And, you know, there's no real home games in the Premier League these days anyway as well. So these are very, very tough to win. But I do have one. It's a small ACCA. It is small because I'm only going 3 teams. I would be looking this weekend for Man City to beat West Ham because you've got to pick Man City, the only favourite you can possibly pick. I'd be looking at Liverpool to beat Sheffield United, even though, as I said in the preview, I'm not that confident, but because Sheffield United are so poor, I think they will win. To add some value to this, I'd also be throwing in Aston Villa at Leeds United because Leeds have thrown away home games this season over and over again. And I've got my fingers crossed for Jack Grealish in, Villa win. So that's my trio.
Lovely trio, and you'll see the odds on screen right now for those ones. Tom, thank you very much for your time today. Great insight. With fingers crossed some winners. I can really feel it this week.
I'll bring in a new Simpsons reference for you every week as well for an obscure 90s episode. That's what I'm aiming for in this series.
Well, that will keep the audience coming back. I appreciate that. Okay, see you next time, Tom. Appreciate it.
So we're expecting some pretty tight games in the Premier League this week. But if you've enjoyed the show, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to it, and also hit that notifications bell to make sure you don't miss any of our daily video betting uploads. And remember, you can also now listen to this show as a podcast, and you have a chance to win a £10 free bet from Novibet simply by leaving a comment in the comment section below. We'll be back for the remainder of the week with lots more videos across Europe's major leagues.